Welcome, Middlers, to the Medium in the Middle podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I take you on a journey of self-discovery and spiritual exploration. I am a Reiki master teacher, a spiritual and business mentor, and of course, a psychic medium. And I am here to share my story and help you tap into your extraordinary abilities. Join me every Wednesday as we dive into the realms of intuition, energy healing, and all things mystical. Whether you're a seasoned spiritual seeker or just dipping your toes into the magical waters, this podcast is your go-to source for inspiration, guidance, and a whole lot of lessons and laughter along the way. Let's get started. Hello, Middlers. Welcome to episode 292. My name is Stephanie. I am the medium in the middle. And today we are talking about all things cards. Today's episode has been on my podcast list for quite a while, and I've had a few recent requests as well to talk about these things. So today is the day. We are going to discuss the difference between oracle cards and tarot cards. I'm going to share how I personally like to use the different set of cards. I'm going to share about the difference and what people like to use each for. So if you are interested in oracle cards, tarot cards, perhaps you're thinking about buying your first deck and you don't know where to start, this episode is for you. Tarot cards and oracle cards are often talked about like they're the same things, and they're not. They are two different decks. They're used differently. They deliver different information, I find. So we're going to talk about the differences, and we're going to talk about how to find the right fit for you. And we're also going to talk about the learning curve for both. Quickly, before we jump into this week's episode, I'm just going to share some updates. I have added another mediumship practice circle for January. I have a lot of requests for evening circles on a weekday, so I am delivering evening circles on a weekday. January 28th, it's a Wednesday, 6:15 p.m. Mountain Standard Time is an evening circle. The next Saturday circle is on February 28th. And I will be adding another evening circle in February as well, so stay tuned for that. Reiki trainings are upcoming. If you want to learn your Reiki Level 1, your next chance is February 7th and 8th. Reiki Level 2 is this weekend, January 24th and 25th. I need one more student. I need an even number for this weekend if you are free and feeling called. Or in February, it's February 21st and 22nd. As always, I'll leave all the links you need down below in the show notes. Okay, let's jump right in to oracle cards versus tarot cards. What's the difference? How to use them? What does it mean? So let's start off with some basic information about each. So let's start off with tarot cards. Tarot cards are a very fixed structure. A traditional tarot deck has 78 cards. You have the major arcana, you have the minor arcana, you have the court cards, and tarot cards are divided into the wands, the cups, the swords, and the pentacles. So of these 78 cards, each card has a specific meaning, and usually each card is memorized by the reader. So it is a very fixed way of reading. Whereas oracle cards, on the other hand, are not as structured. The deck sizes can vary. The themes can vary, the meanings can vary, the cards can vary. So it's all based on the deck's creator. There's not a universal system for all oracle decks to follow. Whereas with the tarot, there is. There's the 78 card, major arcana, the minor arcana, the four suits. There are always 78 cards. And how the cards deliver information is also very different. I always think about tarot as like Big Daddy Tarot. It's the serious deck. And I personally don't like pulling from tarot as often, whereas oracle cards, people will pull a card a day. They will use those decks more often for daily guidance, or you just using them more often. So I find the way that tarot cards pull are, I guess we could say, more serious, where oracle cards are a little bit more lighthearted, helpful information. You're not going to pull the Tower card. It's going to be something along the lines of, a Goblin's card or a Mountain card or a message that is a little bit lighter. So let's talk about the learning curve and how to learn each deck. Tarot usually does have a steeper learning curve because you have to memorize 78 cards and their meanings, and they all have a very specific meaning. So it's not like oracle cards where every card can have a different meaning based on the deck. Tarot is the same meaning for any deck that you use. Now, the imagery is different. Each deck is still different, but it's still following the same 78 cards, the same suit. So there tends to be more study and card readings and suits and numbers and spreads when it comes to tarot. And oracle cards are generally more accessible for beginners. You can read straight from the guidebook. You can trust your intuition. You don't have to memorize 78 cards right off the bat to understand what each card means. Also, a lot of oracle cards will have little statements underneath the card that kind of gives you a little hint into the card meaning, so that's helpful as well. So I would say the oracle cards are ones that you can do readings and read off of the book. In tarot, you can still read off of the book, but most people will start to memorize those in order to do their readings. So if you're trying to consider where to start, if you're considering, should I get an oracle card deck? Should I get a tarot deck? I would recommend starting with an oracle card deck just to get comfortable with learning the cards, shuffling, using the energy, trusting your intuition, and then go from there. There's also more flexibility with oracle cards. You can pull one card, you can pull 3 cards, you can pull 5 cards. There's not really any rules, where with tarot, there's more traditional spreads. And just like, for example, I wouldn't pull one tarot card, but I would pull one oracle card. So I'm just going to share some of my personal thoughts on each deck. I started with oracle cards, and I personally don't like to have many decks. I know some people have like dozens and dozens of card decks. I use the same 3 oracle decks, and I have 1 tarot deck. No, I have 2 tarot decks. Sorry, that's a lie. I was gifted one, and there's another one that I bought to try to learn. I am not good at memorizing things, so tarot really isn't my forte. I can read oracle really well, but tarot, Ace of Wands, what does that mean? 7 of Wands, what does that mean? Knight of Swords, what does that mean? I don't have them memorized. And again, it's 78 cards to be memorized, plus all the suits and what each suit means, and then what each card means. And why I don't like purchasing new oracle card decks is because then you have to learn the whole deck again. Again, it can be any amount of number of cards. Every card can have different meanings. There's different imagery on the cards as well that you can learn the meanings of. But also energy. I find the more I use decks, the better I am at reading them. So for me to buy a new deck, put my energy on the deck, clear the deck, make the deck mine, get comfortable with the deck, shuffle the deck, put my energy on all the cards, learn all the cards, look at all the imagery, read the whole book for each card to start to understand the meanings. That's a lot of work to get used to a deck. So I like to learn the deck, and then I have that deck, I know it like the back of my hand, and I can read really well from it. Whereas tarot is different because once you know the tarot cards, you can use any deck. The imagery can be different. However, it is still all the same meanings. So all the tarot decks will have, again, those same cards with the same meanings. So I can, I guess, understand why people have multiple tarot decks, because that could be fun. But oracle, you only really need a few. Maybe one is good, but I find you don't need as many decks. And when it comes to oracle cards, I like to use the deck based on what I'm asking for. So the 3 oracle decks that I have are the Rebecca Campbell Work Your Light deck, the Kyle Gray Angel Guide deck, and then the Colette Baron Reed The Enchanted Map deck. That was my first deck ever given to me. And I find each of these decks I use for different things, and it depends on your question. So what I like to do is I like to think of the question that I want to ask the cards, then I pick the deck based on the question. So the map is really good for anything map related. Do you need a map of where you're going? Do we need an outline of the path forward? I like to use the map for that. Rebecca Campbell, I find the Work Your Light deck is I always think of it kind of like a warm hug. It's going to be a little lighter in its delivery. It's kind of more lovey-dovey. It's a little bit easier in the messaging. So I find if it's like a very difficult question or a sensitive question, sometimes it's nice to have the Rebecca Campbell like soft energy approach. And then the Angel Guide deck, this one is good for kind of higher awareness. Sometimes if you want specifically angel guides, you can do that. I personally don't work with angels necessarily, but I do really like this deck, especially how it pulls. I like the cards, I like the meanings, I like the imagery. I find it's a good mix of the map and Rebecca Campbell. It's not too light like Rebecca Campbell can be, but it's also not a map like the map deck. So I like it as kind of an in-between. But I like having all three options because depending on what my client needs, they have options to choose as well. So I always say, okay, think of your question. With your question in mind, I'm going to show you 3 decks. Tell me what deck you're called to. And there's no right or wrong. It's just wherever your eyes go. If you're like, oh, I'm being called to the map. Perfect. That's what we're using. And then I put the energy of your question into the cards as I'm shuffling it until the cards are ready. So I've gotten to know my Oracle decks through years and years of using them and experience. In regards to my tarot deck, I have the Moonchild tarot deck, and it's a very beautiful deck. It took me a long time to find a tarot deck. I went to lots of stores and I looked at them and I held them and I sway tested if this was the deck for me, and I looked at the cards, and yeah, I just take it pretty seriously, finding and buying decks. I don't want to waste my money and time and energy. So I want to buy the correct deck the first time. So I just take my time. Same thing with anything spiritual. Like when I needed a pendulum, it took me over a year to find a pendulum because every time I picked up a pendulum and I said, "Are you my pendulum?" it said no. And I was like, I want a pendulum. Why? I can't buy one. They're all saying no, until finally I found my pendulum and it said yes. So I find cards are the same. But with tarot, I've taken courses, I've purchased ebooks, I've, done a lot of research into it. And I, again, still don't have them memorized. I don't read tarot. I've practiced like with my friends or on myself. But even when I'm practicing tarot, I'll only do it a few times a year. I don't like to pull tarot very often. That's just personally. I would maybe only pull tarot once a quarter max, where I know some people like to pull oracle cards every day. I personally don't recommend it. And let me tell you why, because I find a lot of people like to pull cards every day. I believe that if you trust your intuition, you should not need external confirmation or guidance from something like a deck every single day. Then I find that is a crutch. Once a week, great. If you want a theme of the week, if you're going through something and you need help, if you have a specific question and you want to pull a card, I think all of those are great ways to use cards. But to pull a card every single day for guidance is going outside of yourself looking for that guidance when your intuition can give you that daily guidance. I don't necessarily think people need cards. Again, it's not a good or bad thing. You're going to use it until you don't need it anymore. So if you find the cards are supporting you, use them. But if you find that you're relying on them, I would highly encourage you to start trusting your intuition more and not relying on what the cards say. Because we all know when we pull a card, it's like, oh, yeah, I knew that. Exactly, you knew that. So why are you pulling a card? Eventually, you'll learn to trust your intuition so much that you don't need that double confirmation of cards. And I'll still always remember this story from a mentee that I had a few years ago. This was about her guides, but it applies for the cards as well. When people say like, oh, they gave me the right answer or the wrong answer. It's like, well, how did you know the right answer? Well, I knew the answer. I was just pulling the cards to see. Well, if you already knew the answer, why are you pulling the cards to see? Anyways, I think I've told the story on the podcast before, but I used to ask her guides every day, do I have cancer? And her guides every day would say no. And then she said, Steph, my guides started saying, yes, no. And she said, then they started saying yes, no, yes. Then they started saying yes. She's like, I know I don't have cancer. Why are they lying to me? Why are they saying yes, no, yes? Why are they saying yes, no? They used to always say no when I asked every day. And I chuckled and I said, you asked your guides every day if you had cancer, and they said no, and you didn't listen. So then they started saying yes, no, and you're like, well, that's the wrong answer because I know I don't. And now they're saying yes, no, yes, they're playing with you because you're not listening anyways. So whether they say yes or whether they say no, you're still asking them every day, even though you already know the answer. I find cards are the same. If you already know the answer, the cards will either tell you that, and it's like, oh yeah, I knew that. Or they'll tell you something wrong, and you're like, well, no, that's not true. It's like, exactly. They're trying to teach you how to trust your intuition. You know it's not true because you know the answer already. So why are you asking the cards? I don't think crutches are bad in spirituality. I think you use them until you don't need them anymore. So pull a card every day until you learn to trust your intuition. Pull a card every day until you feel like you don't need it anymore. Use little tricks and tips until you don't need them anymore. In the last circle, I had someone ask, like, why is asking for a name in mediumship a cheat? Like, why is it considered cheating? And I was like, technically it's not cheating, but it just is removing the opportunity for you to get the information. And if you were speaking about professionally working, when you go to a professional, usually it's them telling you information. You're not telling them what you want. Do some mediums say, hey, who do you want to talk to? Oh, your mom? Okay, let me go get her. Yes. And that is also a skill. You use it until you don't need it anymore. You have someone tell you the name until you don't need that little piece anymore. But do I think it's bad to practice like that? No. I think of it like training wheels. You're going to use your training wheels till you don't need training wheels anymore. And once you're on your two-wheeler, you don't go back to training wheels because you don't need them anymore. So if you are considering Oracle or Tarot for your first deck, I would recommend Oracle. And I would recommend that you go and look at the decks, look at the imagery. Usually when you go to buy them, they have one open deck that you can look through. And just see what you're drawn to. You'll like certain ones over others. You'll be called to them. Don't force buying a deck. Don't waste your money until you find what is a good fit for you. And then you're going to learn the deck. You're going to practice. You're going to read each card. You're going to put your energy on the cards. You're going to clear the cards. You're going to make the cards your own. You're going to understand the cards. You're going to practice on everybody that will let you practice. You're going to practice on yourself. You're going to start to memorize the meanings. You're going to start to really look at the cards, and you're going to look at the imagery on the cards and what does that mean to you and what does that represent and what sticks out to you. Is there a butterfly on the cards? Does that mean movement? Is that wings? Is that travel? What does that mean for you? How are you going to interpret it? And then you're going to really get to know your deck. I find that people give better readings the more and more they know their deck, which comes with time and practice. So I recommend learning one deck at a time, especially not to overwhelm yourself. Get really comfortable with one deck. And then if you happen to find another deck that you absolutely must buy, then do the same thing with that deck. Start to practice, make it your own, clear the cards, learn the cards, read the book, look at the images of each card, all of that fun stuff. And that's the fun part and where the variety comes in because, again, based on what your question is, you can use the deck that you're feeling called to best answer your question and get the best results. There are also lots of card reading courses you can take. Like I know Rebecca Campbell has some, Kyle Gray has some, I'm pretty sure Colette Baron-Reid has some as well. So you can take courses, you can learn about certain decks, you can learn about different spreads you can do, you can learn about how to pull them. There's lots of information available. I don't teach anything about pulling cards. I'm good at pulling cards because I've been practicing for 6 years, and that's how I learned. I did take courses here and there to help me, but for me, nothing has helped me more than just practicing. Especially when I first got my card decks, I just asked everybody if I could read for them. And I played with my cards, I shuffled them, I looked at them, I read the book. I tried my best to memorize things. So just give yourself time to get comfortable with learning your deck. And I also highly recommend that you take your time finding your deck. Make sure you buy one that you resonate with, you like it, it feels like it's yours, you like the imagery, you like the deck, you like the box, you like the artist, you feel called to it. I find too, if you feel connected to your deck, that makes it a lot easier. You're going to trust your intuition. You're going to learn about what you feel the cards mean. You're going to learn about what the card meanings are. You're going to learn about what the book says, and you're going to blend those all together to give you your own reading that's unique to you. So in summary, tarot is more structured, 78 cards, major arcana, minor arcana, 4 suits. You're going to memorize the cards, and you're still going to use your intuition, but it is specific meanings for specific cards. Oracle decks do not have a set number. There's no real structure for them like there is for the tarot. The creator of the cards can really be creative in how they deliver these things. The meanings are all different based on the cards. If you are doing more regular card readings, I would recommend Oracle. I don't recommend tarot that often just because it is usually more serious, quote unquote. And it usually has more information, whereas Oracle can be a little bit of guidance here and there. You can also get a deck of both and try to learn both at the same time or see what you resonate more with. Card decks usually aren't that expensive depending on what you're getting. Also, Hay House, it's a website that you can go to. They often have really big sales where you can get card decks for like $14, $20, $15. So you don't have to spend a ton of money on cards. They say that your first card deck is supposed to be gifted to you. I don't know if that's an old wise tale where tarot will find you. So also gifting a deck is a very good idea. If you purchased a deck and you didn't like it, give it to somebody. It's a very good thing that you can pass on because it might resonate with somebody else, and it might be the way that cards come into someone else's life. Do I think you have to wait to be gifted a card deck in order to explore this? No. Some people will say that's gatekeeping. I don't think it's gatekeeping. I just don't think you need to wait for your deck to arrive. I do think if tarot and oracle is supposed to find you, you will be gifted a deck. When I first started, I was gifted my first tarot deck and my first oracle deck. It was in my realm, but I also was in a stage of life where like I would have no idea how to buy a deck, how to pick a deck. Like I was like, oh, like that'd be cool, but I don't know anything. So when I was given these decks, it just gave me kind of the freedom to play without knowing what I was doing. So I was gifted my first tarot deck from a friend who she had the cards for a very long time. And she's like, I've never liked these cards. They never worked for me. When she gave them to me, I realized why. They had never been cleared. Never. She had never cleared them. She didn't clear them in between readings. She didn't clear them when she bought them. So it took me so long to clear those cards. I had to clear them one by one. I left them out in the moonlight. I cleared each card with Reiki, with smoke, with sound. Oh my gosh, it took me forever to clear those cards because they hadn't been cleared. Now they're fine, but it did take me a lot of work. And then my first oracle deck was given to me in my Reiki Masters training. The lady I practiced Reiki on in the training, she actually knew Colette Baron Reid when she was just starting out. So she's like, oh, I have like a bunch of her decks from when she first started like a long time ago. So that's why the deck that I have, I think is the older version, is because she just had it for a long time. So she gave me that deck. And yeah, that kind of is what kicked it off. I practiced cards. I would say for about 3 years before I started offering card pulls. And then I started offering card pulls. I would do 3 card pulls. And I didn't start offering readings till, at least 4 years, I would say. It took me a long time to feel comfortable with doing like an actual 20 or 30 minute reading, which I just started offering last year. Now I'm very comfortable with doing readings. I offer 20-minute readings. I offer 30-minute readings. 20-minute readings I find are good for like one question. 30-minute readings, some people divide it into 2 questions and 2 spreads. Some people just want one focus and we just keep building out, asking for more information, asking for more specific information. If a specific card pulls, it's like, can you tell me more about this card? More information. So again, Oracle is much more customizable, where Tarot usually have specific spreads. So I would say with everything spiritual, just have fun, play, try things out, see what works for you, and give yourself a lot of time. I have heard this like multiple times this week. People are like, I tried it for a month and I didn't get better, so I guess it's not for me. Someone else was like, I tried manifesting for a month and then I gave up. I was like, no, a month is not a long time. I know it sounds like a long time, but like in the grand scheme of time, a month is not a long time. Give yourself, like I said, it took me years to be comfortable with my cards. And I did practice fairly often. I started pulling cards on the podcast just to learn my card deck. So there was a few years on the pod, and the pod has been around for 6 years. So I think there was about 2 years where I pulled a card every week. That was for me to learn my deck. And that was for me to start to learn interpretation. And that was for me to start to learn to trust my intuition. So again, every week I did that to try to learn. So give yourself more than a month, more than 2 months. Things take time and practice, but you will start to memorize them. You will start to learn your cards. You will start to become more comfortable. And then eventually, you don't need to read from the book. Eventually, you don't need to double check the meanings. Eventually, you'll become more and more confident in your abilities and in your intuition. But that is all my opinions. Use your card decks as you wish. Pull cards every day. Pull cards twice a day. Pull cards every hour. Do whatever you want. Do whatever works for you. That's the beauty of spirituality. It is whatever works for you and whatever you want to do. I personally don't pull cards for myself. And when I do pull cards, again, they're usually telling me what I already know. So then I roll my eyes that the cards told me what I already know, and I pulled cards to confirm that. Sometimes if I need the confirmation, yes, I'll pull, but I like to avoid it. I try to trust my intuition. I try to listen to myself. And you guys know I'm the type of person that I don't like to know. So I don't like to pull the cards to confirm, because if it's not confirmed in my head, I'm like, oh, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, who knows? But I also know, like I talked about in I think last week's episode, some people like to know, some people don't like to know. And it doesn't matter which camp you're in. I personally just don't like to know, so I don't pull cards very often for myself. But you can do whatever works for you. I wish you could hear right now, but Archie is laying on the couch snoring. I'll try to take a video. And the last thing I'll say, if you know how to sway test, you can always hold things and ask, is this my card deck? Should I buy this deck? And see which way you sway. Do you sway yes or positive or no or negative? And you can use that to help you find a deck. Or when you're trying to ask a question, you can also use muscle testing, sway testing to see what deck you should use. Again, these are all just helpful tools until your intuition gets stronger and stronger and you feel more confident in listening to it. I usually find whatever card deck my eyes are drawn to, that's the one I should be using. So I hope this little conversation was helpful for you around tarot, oracle decks, how to use them, which one is for you, what the differences are. I've been getting asked this question for a long time, and I've been meaning to make an episode about it, so here you go. I am not the expert on cards. I know what I know, and I would say it's very little. But there are a lot of resources out there. You can find people who create decks. They usually have a lot of information or courses. You can go to the pros, the Colette Baron-Reeds, the Rebecca Campbells, the Kyle Grays. Go check them out and see what they have to say, what they offer to learn. But you guys know me. I'm going to tell you to practice, practice, and practice some more. And that's how you're going to get good at anything. Nothing skips practice. There is no secret sauce. There is no special something. There's no fairy dust. There's nothing I can tell you that's going to skip years of practice. So have fun with it. And just know it gets easier and easier the more you use your decks. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this episode helpful. I will leave all the links you need down below to work with me if you want to book an appointment with me virtually or here in Banff, Alberta. I also work in person. If you want to register for a Reiki Level 1 or Reiki Level 2 course, all my courses are 2 days and they are held virtually via Zoom. And also the link to register for the mediumship practice circles. The next one is next week. And I'll always keep my website updated when I add any new dates, so you can keep an eye on themediuminthemiddle.com. Subscribe to this podcast. I release new episodes every Wednesday. But until next Wednesday, Middlers, when I see you in your ears, I hope you have a wonderful week. Bye, everybody.